Our next bill is Representative Purcell again, House File 1316 on Soil Health Financial Assistance Program. Please move your bill, Representative Purcell.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. House File 1316 is very near and dear to my heart. Soil health is a space in agriculture where there's a broad coalition of supporters, where conventional row crop farmers in my district feel renewed and excited to farm again. It's been an on-ramp for my friends and neighbors to more and more soil health practices, rebuilding our precious topsoil that sustains life. There's also a lot of enthusiasm around this in my community of smaller scale organic farmer friends, and it's been a really beautiful place in my experience of the last decade or so of where we can come together. You will see in your packet there is a long list of supporters to this bill, and some of whom we will hear testimony from today as well. So I would love to turn over to testifiers.
We do have an amendment, so we'll go with your author's amendment first, and then we can move to testimony.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
So if you can move your A2 amendment.
Yes, so moved.
All right, please tell us about your A2 amendment.
So the A2 amendment predominantly puts the dollar amounts in there where we did not have dollar amounts before. Similar to the first bill that I presented on this committee for the co-op grants, so there's a maximum of $50,000 appropriated for a single entity, and this is putting $10 million in fiscal year '24, $2 million for fiscal '25, and just wanted to make sure that we were adequately funding this program, which has been very popular, and want to support adequately with funding.
All right. Discussion to the A2 amendment. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion prevails. The amendment A2 is adopted. Now the bill is in the shape of the author wants, so we'll move on to testimony. TJ Cortez, if you can identify yourself before the committee and.
Thank you, Chair Vang and the rest of the House Ag Committee. Thank you, Representative Purcell, for presenting House File 1316. My name is TJ Cardis. I live in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota. I'm a regional sales representative for Southern Butte Ag from Tangent, Oregon. In this role, I cover 5 states, including Minnesota. Selling and helping producers with cover crops for seed and application. I also work with the dealership network and distributor network at the same time. I also help run Cardis Seeds with my wife Kathy and our 2 sons, David and Anthony. I'm here to support this bill from a unique perspective of seed and equipment providers who also have a role in supporting farmers to get soil health practices on the ground. This is a great bill because it will help get producers to apply cover crops to their operations, but we also have a front row seat in what makes this work. For farmers pursuing cover crops for the first time, they have concerns like where to source seed, whether they need to line up planes, high clearance machines, no-till drills, or other ground application equipment. Later in the fall, when farmers are busy harvesting, they don't have time to run the equipment. Businesses like ours have a crucial role in playing and making soil health programs work, because when growers are getting started on soil health building practices, they often have a lot of questions. Sometimes fear about how to try to start a new soil health practice, or where or how the benefits will be shown to them. Between the financial support from this program outlined in the bill and the business community, we can reduce hurdles for farmers facing these practice changes. For example, in our shop in Blooming Prairie, we line up cover crop seed, we warehouse the seed, we mix, we possibly deliver to the farm. We also help walk farmers through the government contracts to make sure they get them done correctly. We also do the application work if need be. Other growers will apply it themselves. If they do, we supply them the seed. This bill proposed invests will provide needed support for producers to have financial resources to make this leap. And there's a community of businesses like ours that will stand ready to rise up the opportunity as a resource to support this expansion in the application of soil health practices. The bill presented to you today will help increase the adoption of soil health practices and all the benefits they provide. The more support and opportunities growers have to do cover crops, get them applied to their farms, and do it successfully, will make this work. This bill will help with that. I'm here for any questions at this time.
All right. Our next testifier is Carolyn Olson from the Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation. Carolyn?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Carolyn Olson, and I serve as the Vice President of the Minnesota Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau represents nearly 30,000 farm families across the state of Minnesota. I farm with my husband on our Century Farm in Lyon County. We started our transition to organic crop production in 1998 and now farm all our land organically. We have an extended crop rotation growing corn, soybeans, small grains, and alfalfa. We plant a cover crop mix of oats, daikon radish, and berseem clover on the fields that had small grains after that grain is harvested. The cover crop mix are all annual varieties since we need them to winter kill as we cannot use herbicides. Organic production relies on mechanical tillage for weed control. Even though we cultivate the row crops in the summer and use various tillage tools in the fall, our soil tests show that we are building organic matter. Farmers care deeply about the environment and continue to be stewards of the land. We ensure the future success of our farm by taking care of the ground and securing nutrients in the soil. Minnesota has a very diverse range of soil types across the state, and one size does not fit all. Representative Purcell's bill allows for a wide variety of practices that provide farmers the possibility to make active decisions about what will work best on their farm, depending on where they live. These grants will actively put conservation practices on the ground through a wide variety of eligible expenses that are often too big of a barrier for farmers to overcome on their own, especially as they are taking risks to be leaders amongst their peers. There is a liability you take as a farmer when first implementing soil health practices, and if you don't implement the practices just right, you risk a major financial hit. This bill helps to mitigate some of those risks among farmers who are looking to be a progressive leader. Minnesota Farm Bureau supports voluntary, market-based approaches to soil health and to environmental practices. By providing a grant program with broad reach, we can continue to help farmers do what is best on their land and remove some of the prohibitive financial barriers that they face as they look for innovations to improve soil health. We care deeply about the environment, and we ask for your support on this program. Thank you, Representative Purcell, for bringing this bill forward, and I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Carolyn. The next one is Pat Luneman. If you can identify yourself before the committee again.
Patrick Luneman, a dairy farmer from Todd County. Thank you, Chair Vang and members of the committee. It's again a privilege to talk on this bill. I ask for support for House File 1316, authored by Representative Purcell, which is the Soil Health Financial Assistance Program. As one of two farmers on the Governor's Climate Change Advisory Council, I can tell you that this bill fits the vision of the climate change framework released in September. Improved soil health equals carbon capture equals a climate win. In the conversation with climate experts and farmer leaders across Minnesota, the Advisory Council process determined that if there was a vast need for modern equipment, technology, and things as simple as cover crop seed. We had long discussions about where's the seed going to come from. We really did. And then how are you going to get it all planted on time? So if farmers are to be successful in enhancing soil health, they need the tools available to perform their tasks well and on time. I appreciate that House File 1316 is broad and does not just focus on cover crops. There's a lot more to solving better soil health than just cover crops. The Climate Advisory Council believes that an all-of-the-above approach must be used if we are to make progress on soil health and climate change. The funding in the bill as proposed is to work through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and I believe that's the correct route, but the money should eventually end up, as is in the bill, in our local government agencies. The best example that we on the farm have is our local soil and water conservation districts, and we need to be sending the funds through existing programs and entities that already are working with farmers, that have the farmers' trust, and have a track record of success. This bill has broad support from the ag community. You know, I'm a member of a number of different farm groups and play leadership roles, and most of their names are in support of this bill. I believe this bill will build on the success from the existing program, and remember that greater soil health is a climate win. I urge you to move this bill forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And finally, we have Ann from Minnesota Farmers Union.
This time on this side of the table. Thank you, Chair Vang, and members of the committee. Again, for the record, my name is Ann Schweigel, and I'm a farmer in Big Stone County. I also have the honor to serve as the Vice President of Minnesota Farmers Union, and I'm proud to share our strong support for this proposal. We're proud to have worked with a broad coalition of farm groups to establish the pilot Representative Purcell's bill builds on, some of whom we've already heard from here today. But personally, for me as a farmer, this program is hugely exciting because I want to continue to do more soil health work on my farm. However, the initial cost of adoption is such that it's extremely hard for us to implement new practices. Take cover crops as an example. Because of the short growing season in western Minnesota, we have a very narrow window in order to get cover crops interseeded into our row crops. And that takes specialized equipment, which costs at a minimum 5 figures. And as with everything else, you can imagine that the price has gone up in the last few years. As young farmers with a young family, that's not money that we just have laying around. Long term, we think that we can make this practice work financially and practically on our farming operation. And a state program would help us get over that initial cost of adoption, which would be hugely helpful. That's just one example from one farmer of how this program will help us continue to improve our soil health for generations to come. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and to Representative Purcell for her leadership in advance for your support.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further testifiers, discussion to the bill. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Vang, and Representative Purcell. Thank you for bringing this bill forward, and I do some cover crops on my farm as well, and Ms. Schweigel, you've touched on a lot of subjects that are important. We have a short growing season in Minnesota. There's a lot of challenges with that, and I think finding something that fits in our farms, is important. And when there's not extra funds, oftentimes we work on very slim margins, and when we're trying to do the right thing, it can be easy to just do what we've always done because that's the way it's been done, and not try new things because there is a cost there. And I think that it's important to be able to have some funding mechanisms to be able to try some of these, and being able to go through the SWCD and others really is important with that. And I had about 2 weeks ago, the Minnesota milk producers were down here, and there was one of them that I was visiting with that farms right in the corner of Wright County, Carver County, and Hennepin County. And last fall, he had gotten some, talked with his counties, SWCDs, on getting some cost share to be able to try some, implement some cover crop. And he found it interesting that Wright County, they covered the highest percentage of it. Carver County, they were somewhere in the middle, and there was no programs available in Hennepin County. And he just found it was interesting that it's, as somebody in agriculture, oftentimes we feel that we have a target on our back by some of our urban neighbors. And that somebody, here was Hennepin County had no cost share programs available for cover crops. And so it's more of a comment than a question, but it's something that, I think that it's important to be statewide on this, and probably for the seed guy, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but, do you use any drones in, or have you used any of that for, seeding in crop?
TJ?
Thank, Madam Chair, Representative Nelson. Yes, we actually have started a program now where we're working with a different mix to make it work from beans to corn. And that has been one of our stumbling stones in the ag industry is grass in front of our corn. That's always scared producers, and it should scare producers because it can get out of control and be a mess. So we've started a program with some drone companies to try to do some research, and we flew it actually on with a plane last year. So we did red clover, crimson clover, winter camelina, which was testified earlier about I use it as a cover crop seed, but there is an oil market for it, and a kale product. We put a little bit of oats with it to bulk it up so the plane could fly it on. But that's a mix of 10 pounds, and with the drone applications, that's something that could work. So we have a pilot project by Medford, Minnesota. We have 160 acres. We have a pilot project down in Iowa. So if that works, we're gonna try to do a field day this spring, look at it, have the guys strip till into it and see if we can make that work. But I really think in the beans, that is something that we're gonna be able to make work, is a mix of that type of product. Cause it's a high seed count, low application rate, and we still get a terrific cover crop out of it. So I think that's where drones, if you're just flying cereal rye, the drones are really ineffective, cause there's just not enough volume. I mean, planes, that's where the planes work. You fly a lot of volume with cereal rye. But with this going from beans to corn, I think that's one that we can really promote, and it's gonna give us our soil health benefits that we're really looking for in front of a corn crop.
Representative Nelson?
Madam Chair?
Oh, Representative Purcell?
Thank you. I wanted to just respond to Representative Nelson's comment. So we farmed right on the border of 2 counties as well, Dakota and Rice County, and working in the watershed where we had 6 different SWCDs who were our closest partners. It varies widely. So I think that's one reason why this program, I'm hopeful that going through MDA, that there might be a more thorough approach to that. But as you were talking, Mr. Cardes and I were just like, oh yeah, we hear this all the time. Like this is a regular occurrence that the political boundaries can get in the way sometimes of the levels of support for growers who want to do the right thing. And so I'm hopeful that this could alleviate some of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Nelson? All right, Representative Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Purcell, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Representative Brand. In terms of grants management, we've had all these audits on grants management, and would these grants fall under the same requirements as the other grants that we've been having?
Representative Purcell?
That's my understanding, but I'm also happy to phone a friend and ask the Department of Ag. They're here and they know about that.
All right, I'd see someone coming to the testifying table. If you can identify yourself before the
Thanks, Brad.
committee and proceed.
Hello, I'm Brad Jordahl Redlin. I'm a manager of the Soil Health Financial Assistance Program and the Minnesota Agricultural Certification Program at MDA. Short answer is, yeah, we will have, we already have set up the pilot effort in this as authorized during the last legislative session. We officially follow all the Office of Grants Management rules on that, and we'll certainly maintain that with this new source of funding.
All right, Representative Hansen?
And a follow-up, and maybe it's Mr. Redlin, but Representative Purcell. So for a burn down on a cover crop, use glyphosate, Roundup. Would this grant go toward, could it go towards buying a sprayer?
Representative Purcell?
Partial.
Mr. Jordahl Redlin, perhaps?
Please proceed.
I can speak to the pilot program that we are operating currently. This is obviously separate legislation from our work, but the way it's structured right now is that the applicant has to provide a rationale for why they need a piece of equipment for soil health purposes. Folks working in soil health know there's a series of principles of soil health. So in an application process, they will identify the equipment rather than us making a limited, 5 items of equipment or something like that. We allow the applicants to say what their soil health need and goal is, and then why the particular equipment will help them achieve that goal.
Representative Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So theoretically, you could buy pesticide application equipment.
Mr.
It would be potentially possible, yes.
Any further question? TJ,
Could I comment on that, please?
please proceed.
So I have multiple dealers that actually have bought high rig sprayers, like you're talking about, and they spray in the spring with it. Then they change it over and use it as a cover crop applicator system in the fall, early fall. And that's the high clearance machines I talked about. So there is something that you're using one machine for two different things. So you're spraying in the spring, terminating the cover crop, which is part of it, and then use it in the fall to reseed your cover crop. So I really think in that way, that might actually play into this bill if you looked at it where you're using it for two different roles on the operation.
Okay. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Purcell, we'd heard the talk going around the Capitol that there may have been an additional amendment dealing with what we're talking about now, pesticide, fertilizer use, and some curtailment of those things. Your thoughts on that? And you know, I think that puts up a red flag for a lot of farmers. And is that something that could possibly be added down the road?
Representative Purcell?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Lead Anderson. That is not in the proposal before us, so some conversations have been happening, and I'm open to conversations on that continuing, but for now, that is not part of my bill.
Representative Anderson?
Yeah, just a quick question. I think the limit on the grants in this program were to be $50,000. And to the Department of Ag, do you see this replacing the Ag BMP program? I mean, this is a grant, doesn't have to be repaid, Ag BMP loans do. So is there a future for both of those programs, or will this eventually supplant that, do you think?
Representative Purcell?
thank-
Oh, go ahead.
I guess my take, I'm not as familiar with the Ag BMP program, but I think to have lots of tools in the toolbox is great. But if Mr. Jerdal Redland can speak further to that, I'm happy to have him go.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Representative. We actually believe that they will be paired potentially often, because it will be able to provide the down payment that the loan can then actually finance the rest of the purchase with for this various soil health equipment pieces.
Okay. Representative Jacob?
Thank you, Chair Vang. So the machine that you're talking about that can be putting on spray application in the spring and then high clearance and put cover crops on in the fall, what's the price of that machine?
Right now, out the door, the new one that sorry, Chairman Bang, thank you very much, Representative Jacobson. The machine that he put together right now costs $475,000. That was with no technology in it. When he put the technology, it was over $500,000.
Okay, so I'm
Representative
just,
Jacob?
thank you. Just so for references, a $10 million bill and $50,000 maximum to a single recipient, this could potentially only help 20 people at those kind of prices. Just saying how expensive farm equipment is.
Yes. Would you like to respond, Representative Purcell?
Yep. I don't have a response, I agree.
Okay. But
Representative Jacob?
So when I first looked at this, I'm envisioning attachments for my no-till planter from, 40 years ago, my John Deere 7000, whatever, attachments that might be $1,000 a row, and this could really be helpful. But when you start looking at the price of that kind of machinery, that seems like that needs to be something that plays out in the open market without government assistance for that kind of pricing.
All right.
I'm happy
Representative
to
Tapke?
respond.
Representative Purcell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I think that's why I'm open to the discussion about the limits too. So, of course, if your cost is $1,000, then we'd like to make sure that that cost gets to the person if you just need to modify your equipment. This is not for, you wouldn't be able to purchase an entirely new piece of equipment, with that $50,000 limit to try to make sure that there's on-ramps available for lots of folks to go further into these types of practices.
Representative Sapke.
Thank you, Chair Vang. I just wanted to clarify that currently in the bill is $10 million and $50,000 each is 200 different, so it's not 20. It's 200 different farmers that will be included in this, and there are obviously other things. But I just want to make sure that 200 is very different than 20, so just wanted to make sure we're in the same place.
Okay. Representative Cha.
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Representative Purcell, closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of my testifiers who bring really important lived experience and the folks who have worked on the pilot project. And happy to continue conversation to make this piece of legislation better. Thank you.
All right, Representative Purcell renews her motion that House File 1316 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion. House File 1316 as amended is laid over for possible inclusion.